All right, so now I'm going to discuss why I have stopped using soil blocks and have gone to this tray called the Winstrip tray. And just real quick, just so we monitor the temperature, it's about 101 degrees in here. It's about 32 degrees outside, but it's the sun that comes in here that makes it like a sauna in here. So you can imagine when this is 50, 60 degrees, even slightly warmer, it's about 120, 130 in here, which is why this sort of environment is not the best for growing all season. All right, so going back to why I stopped using soil blocks. The number one annoyance that I have with the soil blocks is that you have to have the right mix composition. So I just quickly took the peat moss and I took compost and I took the mix that I just made. So in order to make these soil blocks, I then have to push the soil block maker in for each one. And if you don't have the right composition, so I just made, just for efficiencies, I just made the 3 soil blocks. So the one out of peat moss looks like a nice block, but if you have something that has too much peat moss in it, even me picking up, it just falls apart. And you can imagine when this thing dries out, it's most likely going to fall apart as well. The straight compost one has a lot of sticks and everything in it, so if you have something like that in there, something that absorbs moisture or the water very nicely and holds on to it, also doesn't form a nice soil block. Once these dry, these would form a nice solid soil block, but every time you did water, they would most likely lose their soil block form and essentially degrade after that. So the mix that I use for my seeds is very similar to the soil block mix. So you can see they're very nicely well defined. If these were to dry out, they would be nice and easy, they would work. So there's nothing wrong with soil blocks. I used them last year, I had no issues with them. They worked very nicely. But that leads me into my second annoyance. So if I were to very quickly do this again and show you how the soil blocks are made. If I just take it, it's just the 2-inch one. You know, when I push into the soil block into the soil, I really have to push, and then I pull back up and you see it's not fully flush with the bottom. And so I got in the routine of actually pushing the remaining soil mix into there so I can get a 100% soil block. So if you look at buying soil blocks, you can get the handheld ones, but then they also have one that you can use standing up, and that's most likely the reason, the amount of pressure you need to push down to make these soil blocks. And when you're doing it hand by hand, it's fine, and you'll see you can make nice soil blocks. There's nothing wrong with them, but last year I had to make probably 400 to 500 of these, and after a while it's not so much of a fun exercise to do this. It's painful doing this over and over, pushing down, pushing more into the soil block, pushing them out, and then repeating. You can only get 4 at a time, so doing that over and over is quite annoying. If you're only doing a handful of them, it will work for you. It's nice and simple. Like I said, they worked very nicely for us. The second or the third annoying thing about it is you can see when I had to push down to make these very compact little blocks, I'm therefore using double the amount of mix for my seeds. So the mix that I made in the blue buckets would essentially be in half because I had to use twice as much to compact into these soil blocks. So from a cost point of view, you're using double the mix for this to essentially get you to the same thing that you would get in, say, a soil tray. So that doesn't work so well. And the other thing that the benefit of a soil block is for the root pruning, but that also leads into the other annoyance with these is that when you do water, yes, if you have something like peat moss or perlite in there, it will retain the liquid. But as you can see how hot it is in here, there's nothing around these sides minus the bottom that retains that soil. So with the airflow and the heat, these things dry out incredibly quickly. So in a given day, you have to routinely water these things over and over, especially in my setup. And then that leads into the other annoyance. As you're continually trying to stay up with the watering, sometimes it stays too moist, such as something like this, and I had a hell of a time with fungus last year. So all of my trays with all the blocks essentially had a green layer on top of it because there was too much moisture at a given time, which then was an opportunity for the fungus to grow and the dampening off. So taken all together, with the time and effort that's necessary to do the soil blocks, the double amount of soil, as well as the issues that I had with the fungus in my setup, I decided to switch this year into something that I don't see much about, but it is gaining attention, and that is the Winstrip tray. So you can do regular trays. I think this is what people are most familiar with, these kind of flimsy, crappy plastic things. They also work, everything is fine with them, but they're probably 1 to 2 years at max usage, and then you have to routinely keep buying these things. So you put your soil in there, you pop them out, everything is good, but you can see I just pushed on it and that thing broke, so that's not going to go so well. So my annoyance with these caused me to go into soil blocks, but then when I went to soil blocks, I then wanted to go back into something more suitable for my setup, and that's where I became aware of Winstrip tray. So you can get these on Neversink Farm Tools. So the number one thing right off the bat is these things are durable as can be. So I can easily make this flimsy. I cannot really do anything to this. They're incredibly stiff, they're incredibly durable. I would say easily, for how thick the plastic is on this, you're looking to get 20 to 30 years out of these very easily. So the annoyance that I had with the flimsy, essentially right off the bat, this is going to last me for many years, and I can probably even leave them into this greenhouse and have no sort of issues, just because of how stiff and durable they are. They are obviously going to be more expensive. These probably are a few bucks. If you just try buying one of these off that website, they're close to $20. But if you buy I think 10 or more, they go down to about $10 or $11. When you start doing the math associated with, 15, 20 years, these things up front is a high cost, but over time will be the cheaper option compared to something crappy like this. So that's where the other benefit of these come from, is the benefits of what we have in the soil blocks. So soil blocks are nice because they're easy, they're portable, you can just throw them in the dirt like that. They do root pruning, so since they're open to the air, the roots will prune themselves, meaning they'll stop on the side. That's really the benefit of those. The same thing here, so you're gonna have airflow on top, like any other seed tray. The bottom, which is kind of weird and unique, but it does hold the soil in, is open on the bottom. And if you look real closely, there's 2 slits on the side. So that allows airflow top and bottom and on the side to then cause air pruning of the roots. So as roots come out of the soil, as soon as they hit the air, they essentially, what they say, burn off and they stop growing, and then they initiate more roots to grow internally. So they'll keep growing and growing to a point where they'll fill up the ball, but they won't cause that circling. If you've ever seen, probably not going to see it in here, but if you've ever seen something like a plug like this in these sort of setups, you'll see the roots kind of in a circling. So as the circling of roots, they're kind of entwined, and if you put that into the soil, the roots aren't at an angle where they can just go directly into the soil and start going downward, establishing its root system. With root pruning, you'll have all these little knobs all over the place, so they're all sticking out all over, they're not circling. So as soon as you put that into the soil, they'll have that soil contact, and then they'll start growing again. So you'll prune with the air inside the block itself. It won't cause the circling, but put them in there, it's established now many different little fingers of roots, a well-established network, just not 1 or 2 main roots, that when you put it in, it really sets up the stage for a very solid root system. So that benefit of soil blocks is what you're also going to get here, as well as the durability against the tray. The other thing is the airflow. So not only does the 2 slits enable the air pruning, it also allows for airflow. So not only are you going to get the airflow through this, so therefore if you have the airflow, you're going to reduce excess moisture, you're going to reduce disease. But the slits, as much as they do provide that benefit, you still see there is a structure, a plastic four-sided wall structure to the plugs themselves. So the issue that I have with the water evaporating because there was nothing holding that soil in, I am going to get that here. So I'm not going to be losing as much moisture. I'm not going to have to go into that repetitive, consistent watering because the structure itself is going to hold that water in, but there's still airflow between the cells as well as within the soil itself that causes the airflow to go, reducing the fungus, promoting air pruning. So that's pretty much what we're going to go after this year. So my annoyance with both of these, but still having the positives of both. So I believe the positives that I can get out of both of these are here, and the negatives and the annoyances that I had with both of them also are not present in here. So this is something that I am going to proceed forward with my seed trays. So there's different numbers. I think this is the 72. So there's like a 50, 72, 128. Given the seed that you use, that's what you use for these sorts of things. So going forward, you'll see me using these seed trays when I start doing my seeding, which is going to be in the near future. So look forward to using these and seeing how they perform against the two things that I've used previously. So we'll see how it goes.